This is episode 750 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to have Dr. Jason Lucas of Farmington, New Mexico, an orthopedic surgeon there, on the show. We met recently at an event put on by a FRW, a Federation of Republican Women's Group, and you're in town to do a presentation here in Albuquerque. So thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and visit with us here at Tipping Point, New Mexico.
It's an honor to be here. I absolutely love this podcast. Listen to it on a regular basis and enjoy what you and Wally instruct us and give us an opportunity to listen to and learn more about economic freedom.
Well, that's excellent. It's good to have fans of the show on the show from time to time, and especially on such a critical issue facing New Mexico. And, we've had doctors, we've had policy experts. Certainly the medical provider shortage has been a big topic of conversation here on Tipping Point, New Mexico. You bring your own unique perspective, both geographically, being up in Farmington, and also, of course, your particular role as an orthopedic surgeon. So, feel free to connect that with the medical provider shortage, or just share a little bit about yourself, your work in Farmington, and some of the maybe unique aspects of doing your job in Farmington, New Mexico.
Well, before I paint the picture black about what's happening in the medical care or the medical practices throughout our state, and especially up in the Four Corners area, I would say that one of the main reasons we come to this state is because of these community of people that are just fantastic. The weather is great, the landscape is beautiful, the outdoor activities, the community involvement is incredible. But for us as physicians, we come to serve our community. We come to work and take care of patients, and we want that ability to do that in a free, economic way, shall we say, but also without having a target on our back because of the various reasons that are hurting us, such as medical malpractice, high Medicaid rates, exorbitantly high tax rates. Those are some of the main issues. When we recruit an orthopedic surgeon to Farmington, it can be a great challenge for us in that they see that medical malpractice is twice as much here as compared to Texas. They see the tax rate is at 21% here, say, in the state versus 10% in Texas.
What tax rate are you referring to?
I'm talking about, well, let's just go to the gross receipt tax.
Okay.
When we look at gross receipts, it is a huge negative factor for us when we have copays, and say it's a $50 copay, we have to pay $4 on every copay, every patient that comes in to the government for that. Mm-hmm. And we can't upcharge that. Being a medical provider, we're held bound to whatever their copay schedule is. So a business can increase their copay. We can't do that. Therefore, if you look at legislation that happened previously, House Bill 14 this past year was discussed and passed, but then was vetoed as an omnibus tax bill. That has a direct impact. In fact, that gross receipts were going to come back to medical providers and provide an extra $50 million. That would have been a benefit to us in the state.
Yeah, HB 14 was the tax bill. It was, to say, call it a hodgepodge of different legislative items would have been an understatement. It was a total mess of a bill, especially considering, as we always say at the Rio Grande Foundation, that this state is awash in oil and gas revenues and tax dollars. The state has a bunch of money. A bunch is even a bad word. It's boatloads of cash, and they seem to be nickel and diming people that they claim to want to bring to the state in the form of HB 14. You could easily eliminate the gross receipts tax on all medical providers 100% of the time, and that would be not a drop in the budgetary largesse that the state has.
That's really well said. And our hope is that in this special session, potentially something will be brought out about gross receipt tax and improvements for us, because we need that benefit as in recruitment of physicians, looking at the tax costs and those issues. We need to be economically free. We need that benefit. But getting on to another subject on that,
Mm-hmm.
for Farmington, I had a dear friend, a partner who was an orthopedic surgeon working with us in Farmington. Fantastic surgeon. But it got to the point where multiple malpractice suits were against him. And that played a significant role in his ability to practice, and has a desire to leave. And therefore, he left our community, leaving us without another orthopedic surgeon. In the Four Corners area, Paul, there's five orthopedic surgeons five orthopedic surgeons we have in our group, but there is only one part-time orthopedic surgeon in Gallup. There are no orthopedic surgeons in Shiprock. And from Dulce all the way in that Four Corners area, there's just 5.5 of us taking care of hundreds of thousands of people orthopedically. And if we continue to drive costs up, as far as with taxes and the gross receipt issues and medical malpractice, it's going to impact the overall healthcare people have, especially in that area of our state. But medical malpractice itself, basically, in the state, I pay 2 times the cost of an orthopedic surgeon in Texas, in Arizona, in Colorado. It makes it very difficult for me to be able to provide the care I need to when I have a target on my back, and knowing that potentially I could get sued at any point. And looking at some of the other examples of medical malpractice.
Now, is it purely the medical malpractice issue I specifically want to talk about?
Sure.
Would you rank that as the number one issue? Can you get a order of hierarchy, maybe, in terms of what you see, your personal practice? I realize mileage may differ based on different practices, but is that the number one issue that you see, if you could wave a magic wand?
If I could wave a magic wand, I would say medical malpractice would be in the top tier, if not number one, number two, including as far as the tax rates that we have in the state, as well as the benefit now of Medicare and Medicaid. And I'll come back to Medicare and Medicaid.
Now, you mentioned tax rates, and before we get down to that, your gross receipts tax is obviously a part of that. Are you talking personal income tax?
Personal income tax.
Any other taxes?
I'm looking at... we're looking at sales tax. We're looking at property tax. Just comparing across the board to Texas, in all of that, estate income tax, the gross receipts, the sales tax, the property tax, you're looking at about a 21% tax rate for us here versus 10% in Texas or 10% in Arizona. And so that can significantly impact somebody who's making $50,000. Could they use an extra $5,000? I mean, it's just a numbers game from there. But it's unfortunate. And then as you look at these tax rates, you wonder, well, could I benefit more from going to a different state? And so it does play a role in one who's looking at, do I want to practice in New Mexico or do I want to practice in Texas? And it's the same with medical malpractice being number one. It didn't get personal until 2021 when House Bill 75 came through, and that was the legislation which increased our personal rates from $600,000 for medical malpractice payout, or payment for that, from $600,000 to $750,000, as well as surgery centers and hospitals at the time were going up to $6 million. There was no insurance we could obtain for our surgery center to be able to provide coverage from a medical malpractice standpoint. And so the governor came out and put a stay with House Bill 11. And then in 2022, they researched to see, well, could these surgery centers, could these practices provide insurance? And what they found is they couldn't. And so the bottom line is, in 2023, I believe it was Senate Bill 523 was established, which shifted a payout for hospitals from $600,000 to $6 million, surgery centers from $600,000 to $1 million, physicians from $600,000 to $750,000. And so that in and of itself makes it still difficult for us to gain the premiums to be able to pay the cost of the insurance. Hospitals are struggling with it. Surgery centers are struggling with it. And then it only incentivizes the trial attorneys to say, well, wait, I can make a bigger payout now that it's $6 million. And it's a major issue for us as physicians.
All right. Well, I'm going to read a brief passage from I don't know if you saw it, but of course you're familiar with New Mexico Safety Over Profits.
Yes.
That is the trial attorney funded organization. They recently hired a new executive director. Her name is Johanna Bencomo. She is a also sitting Las Cruces city councilor, which is fascinating by itself. But she wrote an op-ed in the Albuquerque Journal recently, and she says a lot of platitudes in there. This is one of the few things that I would call a substantive argument. This paragraph: we must listen to all patients, those seeking timely access to quality healthcare and those whose lives have been forever changed by corporate greed. This has not and has never been about doctors versus lawyers or patients versus patients. The real fight is against the corporatization of healthcare, a system that prioritizes profit over patients and undermines providers along the way. Now, you're a private practice individual. You're not part of a big corporate practice or any of that stuff. Does any of that ring true, or is that just rhetoric?
I think that's more rhetoric. In talking to, I just was meeting with Troy Clark, the New Mexico Hospital Association director, and he was talking about how the hospitals are just trying to make their margins, just trying to make their ends meet so that they can afford the employment of their physicians, their surgeons, as well as their medical staff. And essentially, for us, looking at like let's say a private equity comes in, actually the whole goal of private equity, if they were to purchase out our private group, it's actually to make it more efficient, to bring in more surgeons, to make it a better place to practice. That is their goal, actually. And that is our goal, to make improvements within our practice. So we give better patient care. So we can recruit. We have more funds to be able to recruit better and be better. And so a private equity type of foundation is actually beneficial. Now, there are not very many hospitals throughout this state, and you could ask Mr. Clark that question, that are private equity owned. It's just not there. And so San Juan Regional Medical Center is a community owned hospital. It's not private equity owned, but they're just trying to make their
What
margins.
does that mean? Community owned? Is that owned by the city, the county?
The county.
The county.
So it's a
Okay.
county hospital. And so it's basically established there for San Juan Regional Medical Center. And so it's for the people. It's a nonprofit. And so many of these hospitals throughout the state are nonprofit hospitals. But going to medical malpractice and having a $6 million payout that they could have on three different cases, on one patient's complaint, and have three different surgeons or three different physicians be accused, that's an $18 million payout. That's going to eliminate our hospitals. And that's the reality of it. But they're saying, no, this is all privatization. No, it's not happening in our state. It just isn't happening. So,
Right. One further point specifically on actually related to medical malpractice, an issue that a series of bills actually that got killed in the 60-day session this past year that related to it is these compacts. And I realize you're here, you're not necessarily dramatically impacted by whether New Mexico is in a compact or not, but obviously recruiting doctors. Do you think the compact issue, would those bills, say if they all passed, would they be a dramatic help, or are we just not going to get many doctors here because of all the other issues we're talking about?
No, I think a compact is fantastic.
Okay.
It works well with our nurses. They cross the border from Colorado down,
Which is the one we have, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And so we can expand that for physicians. But looking at it, I think we had 9 bills that had compact related dialogue and discussion in them, and they all got killed. I mean, nothing moved forward on this. I do believe it would be beneficial, especially in the very detailed specialties. Let's say it's a cancer patient that isn't able to receive the care here in Albuquerque, has to go to Texas or Colorado. It'd be so much beneficial to be able to do a telemedicine visit for them instead of having to travel that great distance. To be able to cross borders and be able to care for patients both between Colorado and New Mexico could be very beneficial. Just unfortunately, my understanding is because the commissions are established a certain way, the attorneys can't sue the commission and they can't get the language in there to do that, which unfortunately means they're not going to approve it because the majority of our legislators are going to follow the trial attorneys and the leadership that they have, which is unfortunate.
Now, we know that the governor did not put that on the special agenda, a special session agenda. She cited trial attorneys in the legislature. Every once in a while, MLG, this is my own editorial comment. I'm not putting you in this bucket, but every once in a while, the governor apparently takes some truth serum and she says, here are the obstacles to what we're trying to do here. And she seems to at least be on board with this compact idea. And she said there's too many trial attorneys in the legislature, starting with Peter Wirth, the majority leader, Joe Cervantes. She mentioned Katie Duhigg. I don't know if she's in a position to squash these things, but I'm looking at a Santa Fe, New Mexican article dated September 16th, 2025, and it says the New Mexico Trial Lawyers Association did not and does not oppose interstate licensing compacts. Is that just bogus? Is it these legislators out freelancing because they think it's important? I realize you may not have all the answers, but there seems to be some kind of disconnect here, at least where the trial attorneys are publicly saying that they don't oppose this. But obviously, when the rubber hits the road in the legislature, trial attorneys do oppose it.
It seems to be the case, and it's unfortunate that this is happening because I do believe the compact would be a benefit. It goes to, for example, it's a strange. The legislature does some interesting things. House Bill 36 was a bill in regards to optometrists being allowed to do laser or various types of surgery on the eye. As an ophthalmologist is one who does the surgery and is trained in medical school. There was a bill, House Bill 36, that was established to allow optometrists to receive special training and then to be able to do this. The reality of it is the Ophthalmological Association opposed it stringently. It was still passed the House. It still passed the Senate. It was vetoed, fortunately, by the governor. We're thankful for that. But the reality is, why would that be? Is it because the trial attorneys could then sue those individuals who aren't as credentialed, as efficient? I'm not sure. It's an assumption to be made on why are certain bills done the way they are, or why is the outcome for certain bills the way they are. We don't fully understand it from this. So it's great. It's a great point what you brought up.
All right. Well, we haven't addressed what in many ways I think is the third leg, or the third major leg, we'll say, of the medical provider shortage here, which of course is Medicaid. Before we dive into Medicaid, and for the record, that is the one for the poor. That is the joint program. That is the one in the big, beautiful bill that has some reductions in it that are being discussed in the upcoming legislative session. But you're from Farmington, and there are obviously a lot of tribal areas, Navajo Nation up there. Are there specific issues with Native Americans and Medicaid? I realize they have the Indian Health Service, and there might be some nuances there. But if there's not, just tell me about Medicaid.
That's a fantastic question. And in our group, we love taking care of the patients on the reservation. We love our community in the Four Corners, that entire area. They're some of the most wonderful, great people. But the reality is, when I arrived in 2004, 30% of our insurance in our group was Medicare and Medicaid. 30%
total.
All right. And 70% commercial, which means you go to a private insurance. They're a patient that's employed with a company, oil and gas, and the oil and gas company says, We're going to use Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're going to use Aetna, we're going to use Cigna, we're going to use one of those insurance companies, and they pay at a higher rate. And let me go through that with you. Essentially, if I do a knee surgery on you, Paul, and I bill for $100, I have to negotiate with that private or that commercial insurance. Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they'll pay me $85, or Aetna will pay me $70, or Presbyterian will pay me $90. It just varies. And then on top of that, if we have a Medicaid patient, if we have a Medicare patient, that same very surgery that I do for you, that I bill for $100, I get $27 from Medicare. The very same surgery on a Medicaid patient who needs that surgery too, I get $21. And then if they go to an exchange, I get $17, such as the Obamacare. I get $17 and I have to hire 2 more people just to do all the paperwork involved with it. And so to meet my margins, I need to make about $43 for each of those surgeries. So the difficulty with that is to run a private business is almost impossible with the increase, because today we are at 70% Medicare and Medicaid and 30% commercial and private insurance in the four corners. And
So it flipped.
It's flipped. It's completely flipped. And we have over 900,000 people in our state on Medicaid. We want to take care of the Medicaid patients. We want to take care of the Medicare patients. But the only issue is we can't afford it. And the hospitals are going to struggle with this also, unless we can increase that payment. But it's around $40 to $43 just to make our margins. And that's the same issue hospitals have too. And so,
Okay, so
please, which leads us to economic freedom, businesses,
Yeah.
getting employed, getting regulations released. I mean, we've got to do, as a private business owner, as president of Orthopedic Associates, president of the Four Corners Surgery Center, we need economic freedom to be able to let these regulations go so we can get more businesses up in Farmington to develop a culture of growth and development.
Well, you're obviously preaching to the choir there, and even if you didn't listen to the podcast on a regular basis, I would be saying, you're obviously speaking our language with a lot of these issues. Can give me a brief description of why things have flipped? 30% Medicare, Medicaid, and 70% back in the early 2000s, private sector to opposite. Obviously, Obamacare's got to be a big part of that.
Yes.
Aging population,
But also oil and gas for the Four Corners took a big hit, and we've lost a lot of that industry.
The power plant.
We've lost that industry. Those were enormous jobs, and now we're seeing our utility bills increase cost. I mean, and without those jobs, you don't see that private insurance. It makes it more difficult just to meet the margin. It's not about the bonus or extras. It's about just keeping your employees paid and you have a good employee staff. But yes, Obamacare in 2013 made a huge flip and a change that increased the ability for more people to get Medicaid. And what the big beautiful bill now is saying is we're going to shift that back a little. We're going to control it back just a little. We're not going to touch Medicare. We're not doing anything that's going to harm the elderly. But if you're an illegal immigrant, if you're all this,
you're able-bodied.
If you're able-bodied, you should be able to get insurance. You should be able to get out and work, and they should be. And you're going to be check in, and you're going to say, producing, we're growing, we're developing. Looking at the skyline of Albuquerque compared to Austin, Texas, 20 years ago, there's a significant difference.
Right.
If you look at Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, you go to Phoenix, Arizona, there's a huge difference. Albuquerque, the regulations are tight. The ability to grow and develop business needs to change. We've got to have more business here. And that brings in healthier patients. The other thing is, we up in the Four Corners during COVID, we were the COVID capital of the universe because of the overall health of that population. And we want so badly to take care of these patients, but we have to monitor their health to make sure that they get the best care possible in a safe manner too. But
all right,
anyway,
well, let me ask you about Medicare, because you often hear from doctors about Medicaid, which of course, again, geared towards the poor with a large component of elderly. Medicare, which you cited similar reimbursement rates, a federal program, obviously targeted at the elderly, and your line of work, I would imagine elderly getting a lot of knee replacements and whatnot.
100%.
So
we love them.
Why? But Medicare, you don't, not you personally, but generally speaking, you don't hear doctors complain about that quite as much. Is that just because, is there some political reason for that? Because you don't want to be seen as going after the elderly, or is there some other reason? Why don't you hear the concern about Medicare?
I think part of it is every physician just wants to give the best care possible. We want every outcome to be great. I spent 10 years of my life, 80 to 100 hours a week, focused on how can I help people? How can I improve their life and their outcome? And we see these elderly patients come in that have these just worn out knees. They've worked throughout their life. They put in all their efforts. They've raised their families. They've done everything they can to help their families and help their business grow and develop. and you just want to take care of them. They're just good people, and they're there because they hurt and they want to have improvement. And so it's more of that. I guess it's more of that emotional plea for us to be able to care for the elderly. And it's not about the funds at all. It's just we see a growth and development, like you said earlier. Medicaid is for those who are disabled. It's for the pregnant women, the single moms. It's for the children. It's for those individuals. But able-bodied individuals, we want to see them grow and get in the workforce and be able to develop. And of course, there's going to be people with disabilities that need the Medicaid. But there's a difference there that you want to see that growth and development with someone with Medicaid. But in Medicare, they're held bound to a situation that we just want to improve their lifestyle so they can walk. And there's no greater feeling as a physician than seeing a Medicaid patient or Medicare patient come in that needs a knee replacement, do the knee replacement. They come back and they're smiling and they're happy and they are back active again. They're doing things that they've never done in 5, 10 years. Maybe skiing, maybe being active playing pickleball again. It's just that's part of it.
Sure. So let me ask it this way: the governor has called a special session for October 1st, and if you were somehow her medical, say you're her medical advisor, and you were telling her, "Don't do what you're trying to do, what you're doing in this special session," I assume you have probably concerns and you're not thrilled about that. But if you have some specific things that you think she is doing in the special session that are on target, that's great. But what are a couple of things, especially related to the big, beautiful bill, because that's kind of the agenda item. Now, I realize we could go in and we could deal with MedMal, we could deal with these compacts. Would that be your top priority? What are your top couple of priorities that you would actually call a special session for, or what would you put on the agenda?
I would resurrect Senate Bill 176 from the previous legislative session. And that would help us be able to say, we're getting medical malpractice under control. That is critical because it caps the attorney fees, it decreases the payout for the PCF, and it actually takes punitive damages, that the payment for that, and is put into a fund to help these patients and help stopping any sort of negligence that happens. Okay. I would resurrect that first and foremost. Second thing is I would open up the Medicaid. Now, I believe it was Senate Bill 88, George Munoz and William Scher put that together to make increases so that we have a foundation of Medicaid. We have
a Medicaid trust fund.
Trust fund, yeah. Exactly. And there's a safety net for that is wonderful. But I would make improvements so that when, for example, I believe it's 90 days, Medicaid can reverse back and bring a patient on. They can onboard a patient over 90 days, and it's going to shift in the beautiful bill to 30 days. Okay. That needs to be changed. Not changed. That needs to be adjusted so that we have the ability to put people who need Medicaid to be on Medicaid immediately.
So if somebody's uninsured, but they need a knee replacement, you can retroactively essentially add them onto the Medicaid rolls.
Correct, but that would be more of a trauma-related situation more commonly, or a specific acute injury. But also Medicaid rates. Continue to increase the Medicaid payout and make sure the physicians are getting the pay, and not just the insurance companies. Part of the issue is some of the Medicaid payments, we're not seeing the funds because they're being denied or the paperwork isn't done. And that's a common problem that we run into with Medicaid is they hold off funds until all paperwork is done, and they can deny at any point.
This is CMS. This is the federal government?
Correct. That well,
because I know it's a joint system, but I don't know who the ultimate shot caller is.
And that should be evaluated here. What can we do to improve that payment in Medicaid, because we have so many patients on Medicaid? But the best thing we could do is open up economic freedom to have more businesses here.
Right. Now, we did an analysis. There's a recent report that came out from the Legislative Finance Committee, the Medicaid Accountability Report. And one of the points made is that, I'll just read it, billions in provider rate increases haven't improved appointment availability. The state has invested at least $2.2 billion in increased rate adjustments over the past 5 years. But secret shopper surveys show no improvement in appointment availability. What do you think might be happening there?
That it's a great question, because I don't think the funds are flowing to the right source, to the right people.
Okay.
But also, I think we're looking at being average rather than being the best, and trying to make improve with true improvement.
We as in the state.
The state, and
Yep.
we just can't throw money at it. We've got to make improvements to where people have the opportunity to grow and develop from a business standpoint, and that's I'm taking it from a business angle instead of a medical angle. But I don't think we can continue just to throw money at this situation, thinking that's going to solve the whole issue. But we do need to make increases in Medicaid. But at the end of the day, it's about the patient feeling that ability to grow out of this and become employed elsewhere.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I look at this report and I highly recommend, and I've already emailed it to you directly, and I highly recommend that our listeners look up our analysis of this report specifically. But kind of, I know you and I have already said it umpteen number of times, free markets, et cetera, but we have abysmally low workforce participation rates in New Mexico. We have the nation's highest Medicaid reliance. Ultimately, that $2 billion fund. And, we were out there saying, Republicans, no, don't do it. We don't want to expand Medicaid. We need to fundamentally, and this is a problem with Republicans and Democrats, especially Democrats who seem to believe that we have some 11th commandment, which comes out of Washington, D.C., thou shalt supply unlimited tax dollars to New Mexico. That's not in the 10 commandments or any other commandments. And it's not good for New Mexico. We need to focus on, like you said, getting more people, not everybody, but more people in the workforce, actively involved in their communities, and 100%. Also covered by those private sector healthcare plans.
Correct. 100%.
All right. Yeah, I know you listen, you're on board with it. And obviously that could involve
but also, Paul, I think there's a little fear from some of the physicians of the state, because they rely so much on the Medicaid. They're wanting to see a bump up in that, which makes sense. But there has to be a balance between continuing to develop, lessening regulations so more businesses can come, more businesses provide jobs. My sons are currently looking outside the state for employment because there isn't employment.
Are they in your field?
No, they're not. They're in the business field.
Okay.
But again, in talking to a high-profile New Mexico Hospital Association president, his son's in the medical field, and his recommendation would be go outside the state because it is a high-risk state to be here. Taxes, Medicaid, as well as medical malpractice. All of those things play a role. But,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
But also, for example, when we're recruiting orthopedic surgeons and we say we've got all these wonderful things in this state, which it's an incredible state, an incredible community in this area, up in the Four Corners. People are fantastic. The other issue is, but we've got the issue not only with medical malpractice, Medicaid rates, Medicare rates. We also have the tax rates that we talked about, but it's also the education level. I mean, you're talking about physicians that spend an extra 10 years of their life studying, medical, and here they come in, they look at New Mexico's ranked 50th, and that makes it a struggle on education. Yeah. And so you as a parent have to be actively engaged in their education while they're in school. Crime, Albuquerque, even Farmington. Farmington's listed as one of the top 100 unsafe cities. I mean, there's 87% across the nation, other cities that are safer than Farmington, New Mexico. And we feel our community is a very safe, tight-knit group. Right. But throughout this state, crime is increasing, which is also a concern. We can change these things. We just need the legislature, the governor, to get actively involved in making these changes to help the entire state.
And I get the mentality among some medical professionals and their lobbying groups that, well, we've got to keep the Medicaid money flowing. And I understand that mentality. It's a scarcity mentality.
Correct.
This is not, the state has the scarcity mentality in spades in so many ways. And the focus has to be on how do we create a rising tide to lift all boats.
Exactly. I totally agree. I mean, and the question is, how do we do that? We've got to decrease regulation. We've got to bring in more jobs. We've got to bring in more companies to develop the state. Again, it's not just Texas. Look at Oklahoma. Look at Colorado. Look at Arizona. I mean, look at Utah and the growth and development there. We just need to decrease the regulations to build up and increase. So,
well, I guess you've got flights in Farmington now into Farmington's
Yes.
airport, so it's a start. And I mean, I love the people up there. I mean, yes, I disagree with Senator Scherer on the Medicaid, trust fund issue, but you have great people representing that corner of the state. You have the mayor,
Yes.
who's wonderful. I have a ton of friends up in Farmington, so and it may not be. I call it a poor man's Durango because Durango's really expensive and really nice. And it's not poor man's; it's more like middle class man's or woman's Durango because you're only an hour away from excellent skiing.
Right.
You're just close to the train and all the cool things that they have to offer up there. And Farmington itself is very nice. You have some really great outdoor opportunities. It's tough to get to. You've got
Right.
the lack of freight rail and the roads deteriorating quite a bit. I don't
Yes.
know. I know you and Wally both have been on 550, and it's a hazardous road these days. It's unfortunate. The reality is that
Right.
it's a real rough road. And again, it's just the priorities of our governor and the legislature, and we just need people to actually vote like they care about all these things, which sometimes I wonder about. But
Well, a couple comments
yeah,
on that. Farmington is one of the few places where you could actually, in the wintertime, you could go ski in the morning and
hmm,
golf in the afternoon.
absolutely.
It's 90 minutes up to Purgatory. It's a beautiful ski resort. Come back to Farmington, Navajo Lake. It's a gorgeous lake. I mean, you have Farmington Lake right there. It's just it's an epic area to be if you love the outdoors. And unfortunately, some of the burdens are the regulations that are held for us not to be able to have economic growth does play a role in that. Um, I think also we need to change within the legislature. We need the legislator to continue to develop an economic plan for us, an economic freedom plan for us to decrease the regulations and get growth here in this state. We need growth. We need business. We need jobs. And unfortunately, with the medical malpractice and the overall Medicaid issues, et cetera, the governor herself, unfortunately, being an attorney and receiving some of the higher donations from trial attorneys,
Hmm.
does play a role in how she looks at some of these things, which is unfortunate. I wish we could sway her towards our side. Unfortunately, when she had her knee replacement done, she did it outside the state. I would have loved to have taken care of her. It would have been an honor. It would have been an honor,
I will
an absolute
refrain from
honor.
making any
I know,
jokes on
I
that.
know, but
I would have loved to have done it too, but probably a hacksaw and a shot of tequila would have been my approach.
but unfortunately, I think she doesn't. I don't know what her level of respect is for us here in the state as far as physicians. And unfortunately, she had this awful traumatic experience where her husband passed, had a
Sure.
cerebral aneurysm,
Yep.
and there was a lawsuit against that physician, and that lawsuit caused a lot of loss of credibility for that physician. It was dismissed, but it makes you wonder, why are these changes happening from our leadership down? I would hope that she would listen more to us as physicians to see we are in a healthcare crisis. I'm not crying wolf. I'm being serious. We've lost over 700 physicians in the past 5 years. Every other state has grown in numbers of physicians by 4%, whereas we have had a decrease in 238 physicians. The reality, 32 out of 33 counties, there is a physician shortage. It is paramount that we make changes to where she realizes and wants us to be successful. And that starts with medical malpractice being changed, Medicaid improvements, tax improvements, because then we can recruit the physicians. We can say the governor and the legislators listening to the physicians, or else I will tell you this, you will continue to wait for your physicians and lives will be lost because there will not be the physicians and surgeons here to take care of these patients. It's critical.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And all of these policies, the thing is that you guys are business people. Yes, you're in a specialized field. Yes, you deal with specialized regulations like the medical malpractice issue. But you're you know by nature of your profession, you're high training, you're high earners. So eliminating the personal income tax, as we could easily do or have done with the budget surpluses we've had in recent years, if that was a priority for our legislature. They could have done that. They could have reformed the gross receipts tax to eliminate the taxation of medical services. They should have just made it all look much more like a straight sales tax than keeping it as a GRT as it is now, which is Swiss cheese GRT. But um, the whole idea of bringing in new business and bringing economic prosperity to New Mexico, it doesn't seem like a priority for, I'll just say, the Democratic Party. And does that give you does that keep you up at night? Because it does me. Because I feel like the people who at least are in the inner core, and unfortunately the voters haven't penalized them for this to date, they really don't seem to care about economic development, bringing jobs, bringing doctors here, until or unless people really, really put the screws to them and make this a serious issue, as they did in 2023 in the legislative session on the medical provider issues. But they only go as far as they absolutely have to do, no step further, and then they don't want to talk about it again.
One voice is going to be difficult to hear, two voices, three, but a collective voice of us making this known to the legislator, these changes need to happen. That's where it's going to happen. We've got to make change. You're right. It's significant. In fact, when I was being recruited to Farmington over 20 years ago, one of the aspects, or one of the principles they were telling me was, hey, gross receipts is going to be ending, therefore you will actually have a higher paycheck because of this, but also your business will be improved. And there were some changes in gross receipt, but when we're able to tell a recruit that, and when physicians realize that tax burden is relieved, it makes a big difference. It really does. And the crisis, as it continues, Paul, if we don't have the compact to be able to bring physicians across the state, it's going to get worse. I mean, Clovis, out west Texas, coming across. I mean, we need physicians in our state. We need them. It's serious.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
One final story.
Please.
just a little comical. My sons are having a party. This was just a couple years ago, and I was talking to some of these college students, and I just asked one of them and said, hey, he didn't know me, and I didn't know him, and I just said, hey, where are you going to college? He said, I'm going to UNM. And I said, oh, fantastic. I said, what are you going to do after that? He says, I'm going to law school. And I said, well, where do you want to go? And he said, I'm going to UNM Law School. And I said, fantastic, congratulations, that'll be great. What do you want to do with your law degree? And he said, I want to sue doctors. I want to do medical malpractice. And I said, oh, really? I said, why is that? And he says, because everybody knows it's a gold mine here for lawyers to sue doctors. So anyway, it's kind of a sad moment there for me.
Maybe you kicked them out of your house, I hope.
But the reality, I don't want to end on a negative note like that, but I have to say this. As a listener, this is a fantastic podcast. I would recommend all listen to this podcast. The principles you're teaching about economic freedom are a foundation that we need, and we need to hear repetitively. Our collective voices will make a difference to help us maintain the physicians we have and recruit more physicians here, as well as build business and have economic freedom. We need this to happen. We need this podcast on. We need other podcasts like this to continue to grow and develop it. But as a physician, we love taking care of patients. That's our whole goal in what we do and how we see these patients coming in. I have to be on my A game every single time I'm in surgery. I have to take care of patients perfectly. And in any other business, think of it that way. Do you always have to be on your game? I have to be on my A game, multiple hours a week while I'm in the OR, while I'm seeing patients, because that's their expectation of me. And sometimes it's a heavy burden to carry. And so physicians that know they have a target where they're going to get medical mal, that makes them want to leave because of that. It's emotionally draining for us as physicians, and mentally draining to know that could happen. And so please, out there, help us make change. Help us make a change to bring in regulation, but also changes in medical malpractice and tax regulation, make improvements. I just want to make a plea for that.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Lucas. If I ever need a knee replacement, I'll head up to Farmington.
Come on up.
We'll get it done. Hopefully, despite my basketball playing into my advanced years, so far hasn't happened yet, but you never know. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Find all episodes at tippingpointsnm.com or at the Rio Grande Foundation's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the show at Apple, Stitcher, or tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.